In 2007, on a continent so cold and empty it feels like another planet, a documentary crew stood on the Antarctic ice filming life at the edge of the world when their cameras found something they were never meant to understand: a single emperor penguin walking away from everything that keeps a penguin alive. The filmmakers had come to capture the strange beauty of the frozen South, the scientists who choose to live there, and the wildlife that survives against impossible odds. But what appeared in their viewfinder that day was not a scene of survival. It was a quiet mystery unfolding step by step across an endless white desert. Thousands of penguins were gathered in their colony, huddling against the wind, calling to one another, moving with a deep, ancient instinct that guides them toward the ocean where they feed. Every direction of their lives points to the sea, because in Antarctica, the sea means food, and food means life. But this one penguin turned his back on all of it. He was not running, not panicking, not chased. He simply faced inland and began to walk toward the mountains, jagged shadows on the horizon nearly 70 kilometers away, a place of rock and ice where no penguin can survive. At first, the crew thought it was a mistake that would correct itself. Animals wander a little, lose direction briefly, then rejoin the group. But minutes passed, then hours, and the small black and white figure kept moving in a straight, determined line away from the colony. Through long lenses, the cameramen followed his progress, their breath fogging in the freezing air, the wind rattling their equipment. One of them quietly asked a nearby scientist if penguins could go insane. The scientist hesitated before answering. He had never seen a penguin lose its mind the way a human might imagine, but he admitted they sometimes become disoriented and end up far from where they should be. Disoriented. It sounded simple, almost harmless, but nothing is harmless in Antarctica. The crew watched the penguin grow smaller against the vastness, a moving dot in a world without landmarks, without mercy. Out of concern, researchers later tried to guide him back. They approached carefully, nudging him toward the direction of the colony, toward the noise of other penguins, toward life. For a moment, it seemed to work. He walked the way they pointed. But as soon as he was left alone, he paused, turned his head, and began the long march toward the mountains again, as if something invisible was pulling him, something stronger than fear, hunger, or instinct. The cameraman kept filming, knowing he was witnessing something rare and deeply unsettling, a living creature choosing a path that made no sense in a place where mistakes are fatal. Behind the wandering penguin, the colony continued its harsh, beautiful routine. Parents balanced chicks on their feet so the ice would not freeze them. Others returned from the sea with bellies full of fish and krill, calling out until their young answered. Every movement there was about connection, about staying close enough to survive. Alone, a penguin does not last long. The wind alone can drain warmth from a body in minutes. Temperatures can fall below -40 degrees. There is no food inland, no water, no shelter from storms that roll in without warning. And still the lone penguin walked away from the only place life existed. Days passed under a pale sky that never fully darkened. The film crew could not interfere beyond what they had already tried. In wildlife observation, there is a painful rule: you witness, you do not rewrite nature. So they recorded a small figure sliding on its belly at times, waddling at others, always forward, always inland. The land began to rise gently, the flat ice giving way to wind-carved ridges and the distant promise of frozen mountains that offered nothing but a slower end. There was no dramatic collapse captured on film, no final moment where the penguin looked back with regret. Nature does not perform for cameras. The bird simply grew smaller, the wind erasing his tracks almost as soon as he made them, until distance and blowing snow swallowed him completely. When the documentary was released, that short sequence spread far beyond the film itself. Millions watched the lonely penguin walking toward the mountains, and something about it settled deep in people's chests. Viewers argued over what it meant. Some said the penguin looked depressed, tired of the colony, tired of the struggle. Others saw bravery, a creature following its own path no matter the cost. Scientists reminded everyone that the penguin was not making a statement, not rebelling, not searching for meaning. It was likely a tragic navigational failure, a biological error in a place that does not forgive errors. But humans are storytellers, and we cannot look at a lone figure walking into emptiness without seeing ourselves. We know what it feels like to move away from the crowd, to ignore the voices calling us back, to keep going even when a quiet part of us knows we are heading somewhere cold and lonely. From the inside, it rarely feels like self-destruction. It feels like relief, like escape, like finally stepping away from noise, expectations, and pressure. Step by step, the distance grows between us and the people who would help us if we turned around. That is why the cameraman never forgot the sight of that penguin in 2007, a tiny life against a landscape too big to care. He had filmed storms, glacier, and endless ice, but nothing felt as haunting as that steady walk in the wrong direction. Because unlike earthquakes or blizzards, this was quiet, chosen, or at least repeated. The penguin did not know he was becoming a symbol of isolation, burnout, or silent despair. He was simply following a broken signal in his mind. And in Antarctica, a broken signal is enough to end a life. The lesson humans take from that frozen march is not that the penguin was foolish or weak. It is that being alive does not automatically mean we are moving toward what keeps us alive inside. We can be strong enough to endure terrible cold and still be lost. We can be determined and still be wrong about where we are going. The difference between us and that penguin is that we have the ability he did not. We can stop. We can question the direction we are heading. We can listen when someone calls our name from behind. Turning around is not failure. Sometimes it is the bravest, wisest step a person can take. The image of that penguin walking toward the mountains remains powerful because it reminds us that not every solitary journey is noble, and not every step away from others leads to freedom. Sometimes survival, warmth, and meaning are not found farther out in the cold, but back among the voices we were about to leave behind.